Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to everyone. Once again, you are welcome here on the platform of Awakening of Consciousness. The information is the headline of international news. Europe, which failed in its attempt to prevent these two great European leaders who decided to come to Moscow to participate in the Russian patriotic victory celebration. These two leaders, since they failed to prevent them from coming to Moscow through this health issue, concerning them, which we saw very recently, as both had fallen ill. So, after that failure, the Europeans decided to try other means, still to prevent them from joining Russia. This method used is simply sold. It's embarrassing. This shows how many times Europe has become very weak in relation to the Russian situation. There you go. So, beyond this aspect, many guests, many heads of state have started to gather in Moscow on this May 7th, 2025. Many heads of state. Even Xi Jinping has already arrived in Moscow. It's a celebration. Yes. So, what exactly happened? How did they try to prevent these two leaders from going to Moscow? Of course, this is what we will discuss in this video conference, ladies and gentlemen, which I humbly ask you to share as widely as possible, as usual. Share it in all possible groups. There you go. So, it's Robert Fico who is making the statement. But even before what Robert Fico experienced, the Serbian Prime Minister, these are the two European leaders who announced their participation in the Moscow parade and who want to be there at all costs alongside Russia. So, the Serbian president, who had set out on his way, when he arrived, that is to say, on his way, Lithuania and Latvia announced that his plane should not fly over their airspace, their air territory, their airspace. So the Serbian president, Alexander, was therefore forced. His plane was forced to turn back, detour, find another route before arriving in Moscow. Imagine if the fuel that was planned, was just for that distance. Imagine what that could lead to. Imagine what that could lead to. They say to turn back, take another route. So it becomes complicated. So, Estonia, no. Lithuania, Latvia, refused. And as if all that wasn't enough, Robert Fico also found himself banned from flying over the airspace of certain European territories. We still say that these are all European states. Under normal circumstances, the rule of free movement of people and goods within the European space should be in place because it is a union. But the fact of prohibiting these two from flying over their territory, because their plane is heading to Moscow, says a lot about the mindset Europe has regarding Russia, the negative mindset that Europe has in its veins regarding Europe. I meant to say, regarding Russia, this mindset is very, very deeply negative. So, when it was his turn, Prime Minister Robert Fico, the Slovak Prime Minister, stated that Estonia had not authorized the overflight of its territory for his visit to Moscow. Estonia refused. Robert Fico described this measure as a deliberate attempt to disrupt his trip to Russia. Very, very upset. He said that These people want to disrupt his trip to Russia. That is to say, after they failed, firstly by threat, since Kadyakalas had outright said that all heads of state or executive leaders who would go to Moscow, when they returned to the European Union, would be severely sanctioned. Robert Fico had said that he was going to Moscow, and then we saw both fell ill at the same time. And finally, Robert Fico came out to say that he was feeling better and that he would indeed go to Moscow. Said and done. But then along the way, they wanted to stop him from going. They even prevented him. So he found an alternative, another route to reach Moscow. So it is from there that he describes this measure by Estonia as deliberate attempts to disrupt his trip to Russia. Then he added that an alternative route was found. So here's what happened. They wanted to prevent them from going to Moscow. Meanwhile, it is still unknown whether Ukraine will really lower its guard regarding its intention to bomb Moscow on the day of the May 9th parade, since in the last 24 hours, Ukraine has intensified its strikes on Russia. More than 500 Ukrainian drones were shot down during the day. On May 6th, according to information provided by the Russian Ministry of Defense, Moscow confirmed having shot down 524 drones in 24 hours. 524 drones. This is a record never achieved before. 524 drones is big in 24 hours. This, as well as several missiles and guided bombs. So, not only drones, there were missiles and guided bombs. Despite the Ukrainian attacks, the May 9th ceasefire is being maintained. Since the beginning of the conflict, more than 56,000 drones are said to have been destroyed, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense. Russia, on its part, continues to keep its composure. Russia continues to keep the schedule. The May 9th ceasefire normally is from the 8th, 9th to the 10th of May. But the ministry says the ceasefire is maintained for the 9th. I believe that overall it still is. But whatever happens, ladies and gentlemen, the situation is extremely frightening. We wonder what is going to happen. In any case, the world remains eager regarding this event on May 9th. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that was the international news headline. Thank you for sharing it as widely as possible. I will be back shortly with more news. This was the voice of your humble servant, Robert Théa.